everybody, I'm Amy, this is my wife Maggie.
Hello.
Together we are ThinkerThemer and we review games from two different perspectives. I'm all about the mechanics and Maggie is all about the theme, but today we're applying our unique preferences to the preview list for GenCon 2025. This is going to be our list of most anticipated games. However, we're not going to be at GenCon this year, which we're very sad about because usually we are there shopping up a storm. Send Maggie on her way with a list of things to pick up.
I was very stressed with the list of the things that I'm like, I'm going to get in trouble if I don't get these things, and what's the order that I should chase them.
We do love GenCon. I'm actually quite sad about the fact that I won't be able to get any new merch.
Yeah.
So I'll be wearing old merch.
Correct. You're going to be stuck in, what year was it? Last year?
2024. Yeah, I'm just frozen in time.
Sure. Yeah.
But this year there are so many great games coming out and we've put together our list as usual. We've done all of our due diligence of reading rule books and trying to absorb as much information as we can so we can distill it down for you, and hopefully if you are going to Gen Con this will help you with your shopping. Now it's getting a little bit hard to work out what is an official Gen Con release. Because games are getting European releases separate to the North American release and things are getting a bit blurred now. And then a lot of games are being launched at Origins, which is a convention we've actually never been to, but it's just before Gen Con. And so, you'll see some of those games on there. So technically these aren't all Gen Con releases, but these are the games that we would be buying. We would be showing up and filling our suitcases as usual.
Now remember that this list is our most anticipated, meaning we haven't actually played most of any of these, so we don't actually know if they're going to be any good. So we're going into it relatively blind, beyond knowing, what we can kind of gather from the information that's out there or rule books and things like that.
Buyer beware.
Exactly, yes. The other thing is we're not covering anything that's just a demo. It's really the things that we could see are there for sale, and we won't be adding into this list any of the games that we've already talked about or covered in the channel because we usually have obviously played them. And so I'll go through that list now. So the games are Potions of Azurland, Luthier, Knitting Circle, Conservas, Citizens of the Spark, and Brink. So we'll link below to the videos where we have actually talked about those or covered them in detail.
Now, as is my custom, I'm always going to be cramming as many games as I can into this list because I love talking about games and I love researching games, and so I always have more than 10. And so I'm going to start with 2 honorary mentions. Do you have any?
I don't have any, no, because I abide by the rules and you tell me to let's get a list of 10.
Sorry,
and even then, some compromises were made of merging, doing a little combo.
We'll talk about that when we get to it.
Yeah,
but
no, I didn't have anything beyond.
2 honorable mentions. One honorable mention is a beautiful little game called High Tide. This game looks like if you've seen the abstract game Hive, which is insects, but this this is very abstract. It's kind of, you've got the hexagon tiles and every time you make a move, you're either moving one of your pieces or a neutral piece and you're stacking tiles and you're trying to kind of dominate your opponent, as per a lot of games that I love that are abstract games like Devon and games from the GIF series. Now, I know Maggie will not enjoy this game.
It looks beautiful as a production, but it's very, very abstract.
She won't love it. And so for that reason, I think I would need to play it first before saying wholeheartedly I would purchase this game, particularly because I know I'm going to have to play it with other friends. So, I have to be careful about my collection these days. But I did want to mention it because if you like abstract games, it looks absolutely beautiful. The second game is a game called Stroop, which actually is a game that is a much older game, but I believe it's just been reprinted, perhaps by a new publisher, don't quote me on that, but it's a game about the Stroop effect, which is where your cognition is distorted for some reason. So something gets in the way of you cognitively being able to process information. And so in this game, it's one of those tests where, the word red might be printed on a card, but it's in blue. And so you're trying to process one layer of that information. But it's really interesting because you have cards, and I believe you're trying to shed out faster than anyone else by matching a quality of the card with the card in the middle. But because they're confusing like that, that's a very challenging task. So I think would be really interested to play this game again, see how it feels when you play it. Obviously a really quick filler game.
Yeah.
My biggest annoyance about this game is it only plays up to 4. And it just feels like, just in reading the rules, I'm like, oh, this would be the great filler for a bigger group of people.
Maybe it's a way of containing the chaos, the potential chaos that could ensue.
So that's why it didn't make my official top 10, but 2 games that I just wanted to mention.
So my number 10 is the game Propolis, which is all about essentially you're deploying worker bees to collect pollen and build hives that then will become the propolis. But the way it actually kind of mechanically plays out is you're deploying these little workers into these cards that represent that they have like obviously the kind of worker placement spots that will allow you to collect resources that then you kind of move in your dials that you'll need to spend in order to construct different buildings, which in that kind of tableau building style are going to then give you some ongoing abilities or strengths or discounts and different things. It's also got this almost Splendor-esque element of those buildings have different kind of colors or types, and then there's these what was the kind of like the castles that then you can construct or attract if you manage to have the buildings that match the requirements of that. All of these things, obviously, having points and being whoever manages to do that the best wins. The other little thing that happens in it is where you're deploying your worker bees, there's a mini area majority game happening there, which will then allow you to, if I believe if a row resolves in the sense of it sort of gets filled up with workers, whoever has the majority will get to retrieve those workers for free, as opposed to wasting a turn or an action to do that. So it's an interesting kind of collection of, I wouldn't say there's anything in this that we haven't kind of seen before, but I was immediately attracted by the artwork of it. I really enjoyed Point City, which is again one of those games that kind of does that element of you kind of building your little tableau and feeling really clever because of the things that you're getting. So yeah, for that reason, it's my number 10, Propolis.
Now, my number 10 is a trick-taking game. We are still inundated with trick-taking games. A lot of our spare time is spent going through all of our Tokyo Game Market games, but there is one here that caught my eye. It's called Tricky Kids. Now, this game, the hook of this game is that when you get your cards, they have no values on them. And so you're going to be taking a dry erase marker and writing on the cards the number that you want them to be. Now, the rule, and you'd be like, well, why wouldn't you make them all high and win all the tricks? Well, because you have to sum your cards to 21. So that's kind of the twist on it. So you can make your distribution as you like. There's not a lot of information about this game. In fact, there's no rule book up yet, but I read that as the hook and I could see how that would be really interesting. So it did make it to the list. Now, it's unfortunately not the first time we've seen this mechanic. Another game came out just recently at Tokyo Game Market called the Magic Hand and the Three Elements, and it has a similar thing where I believe you draw on the number but also the suit or something, but we haven't played it yet, so I'm intrigued by this. You know that hive mind effect where
it's the collective unconscious. It's like everyone's tapping into it at the same time.
Everyone taps into it at the same time, and these games come out that are a little bit similar. But I think because I've never seen this before, I want to try it in different ways. So I'd be looking to pick up Tricky Kids.
Now, my number 9 is a game called Trinket Trove, which I believe is these super cute little mice who have a bit of a thing for collecting, kind of like you. Like they're collector mice. They just like to kind of collect different things.
Hoarding collectors.
It's a fine line sometimes. So what you're going to be trying to do is your only currency is other trinkets. So you start with some trinkets all in the form of cards. So really kind of looks like a fairly streamlined sort of very simple kind of card game, and you're going to be using those to bid, to sort of make bids for the trinkets that are on sale. Now the thing is, the bid that you make is also going to be something that someone else will be able to take. So you're kind of bidding something and then you're getting to take 2 other piles in the rank of obviously the bidding winning order. But then other people are going to be taking the stuff that you're putting out, and every card has their own kind of set collection points. Very, very simple, but it's like the artwork is super, super adorable. So that immediately sort of drew me in.
It is. As soon as I saw it, I was like, this is going to be on Maggie's list.
Yeah, and the gameplay just looks streamlined but potentially satisfying. Even though I'm not huge into bidding type mechanics, I like the fact that you're always sort of getting potentially something that will be fun or cute.
I was thinking about this as I was putting this list together, because there's a lot of games coming out of GenCon that have an auction or bidding mechanic, and I was thinking I just need to lean into this. I really like them. For ages I thought I didn't, but no, proof is in the pudding. I think there's a lot of games I like that have auction or bidding.
The same. I think there's I've always had that almost like the sense of the prejudice of like, I'm not into bidding games, but then there's like, except for this one and maybe that one and maybe that one, because they're doing it differently. But every game will do bidding in a different kind of way. So opening.
So I think
more
you
and
do
more.
like bidding.
Yeah, I think potentially. So like now I'm just going into it and checking it out. And so this was my number 9, Trinket Trove.
Now, my number 9 is a bit of a heavier game. It is Suna Valo. So this game is actually takes place in the Planta Nubo universe. So it is a spiritual sequel to that game, but the games are completely different. And we know because we played a lot of Planta Nubo, eventually kind of bounced off the puzzle a little bit. It's no longer in our collection, but and for that reason, I kind of had seen Suna Valo and I was like, I don't know about this game. But now that I know how it plays and I've looked into it more, I'm very interested. Here's why. It is a 2-player only game. I don't even think there's a solo for this game. So it's just 2 players or
Locked
nothing.
in on the player count.
Yeah, and it has a really interesting set of mechanics. So what you're doing is you're essentially building, you're building a tableau, but every time you add a card to a different type of resource, you're going to be reactivating all of the cards of that type of resource. So we've seen that before. But what's quite interesting about it is at any time you've got 3 cards that are essentially for sale above you, and you set the cost for those cards. So you get the 3 cards, there's a market of 3 cards, and your opponent has 3 cards, and you're going to be setting the prices of your own. So you're like, okay, maybe this costs this type of resource and this type of resource. And now the cost to you is going to be the same. So if you want to build that card, you're going to have to pay that cost. But if your opponent wants to steal that card from you, they have to pay you those resources, which leads to a lot of interesting
Free market, yeah.
a lot of interesting dynamics, because maybe you want to make it so expensive so it doesn't get taken, or maybe you want to make it so expensive because you know they want it, and so then you'll get more resources or bang for buck in selling that card. Or maybe you want to just look at what resources they have available and make it so they can't purchase it from you at all. And so that part of this game had me hooked. I was like, that sounds really intriguing. I love games that force you to look at, what the other player's doing, what resources they have on hand, and then work with that strategically. And it seems like something that we would like. There's a player board that everybody has, and as you're fulfilling contracts, you get the opportunity to unlock parts of your player board. We've seen that before, which gives you new abilities. It gives you more space to store your resources. The way the resources are stored on cards is really interesting, and it seems like you're going to be constantly like, oh, I'm generating stuff, but I have nowhere to put it. So, we love that kind of resource management, engine building kind of vibe. So I actually think we might like this game. So it did make it onto my list. It is my number 9, Suna Valo.
Now, my number 8 is actually higher on Amy's list, so we will leave that to later.
We'll come back to it. But my number 8 is a game that technically is not releasing at GenCon, but it's been so hard to get. It was originally a Japanese game, and then Hobby Japan has brought out an English edition of it. It is called Gibberers. And we've been at a couple of conventions, including Tokyo Game Market, where it has been available. It's sold out as well there. So it's been really hard to get. I believe it is going to be for sale at GenCon. What is Gibberers? It is a language-based cooperative game, which is strange that it's on this list, given our preferences. But I think it just seems really unique and interesting. So what you are doing is, as a group, you are starting with a number of words that are kind of made up words that represent your new language of your starting civilization, and they're very basic in their nature. So you're of course going to have a word that means yes, that means no, and that means I, and that means no, as in KNOW. And then around that, you're going to be generating a whole host of other words and assigning them the translated word into your new language. Once as a group you've done that, from now on, you can only use your new language. And as you progress through the game, you are going to be each person is going to try to get the group to be able to translate their new word using only the words they have available in your language as clues. So I'm going to have to use these words that are seemingly nothing, but over the course of the game, we're going to be adding to that, because when you guess my new word correctly, that gets added to our bank of words that we have for our language. And so as we progress through the ages, we're going to be able to explain more and more complex constructs with the words we have. So it just sounds really interesting. I know that a lot of people have talked about this game that it can be extremely long, but there is in the box a version that is a cut down version, which is I think it's still an hour. Which is, so
it's not a filler. It's not really
like a quick word game.
Have you had 5 minutes?
Yeah,
no, it's not that kind of game.
No, but I think like the full game goes for 2 hours plus.
I see.
But you end up by the end of it being able to communicate in like the secret language, and so people have said it's a really fun time. So I actually would love to try that with a group of people. It's not typically the games we.
I'm intrigued by that experience of getting to a point where you have this collective language that then you're able to, with seemingly like nonsensical kind of words, convey complex concepts.
Exactly, and it does get very complex. Like the words that you're trying to describe towards the end are ridiculous, and I'm just like, how do you get from there to there? Very interesting. Anyway, you also have like tokens that allow you to kind of get some hints along the way, and those get limited depending on the level and whether it's the starter or the advanced version, etc., etc. So that is my number 8. Look out for that. It's Gibberers.
Now my number 7 is the game Nature, which I believe, my understanding is this is an evolution of the game series Evolution. So it's all about, but obviously now it's sort of been fairly streamlined and everything's sort of been like any loose bits are like tightened up. You're essentially going to be trying to develop your species and evolve your species to the point where it can just thrive. But there's going to be the different things that you're going to be juggling are things like, well, the size, I believe, of how the kind of presence of size of the species, but then also how much it kind of goes down into the attack elements or being a predator versus how much is going to be on the defensive or things that allow it to escape from predators. And so it's very much a modular type game where the basic version of it is fairly straightforward. But then there's all these different modules that add all these different kind of, levels and abilities. And then as you're combining them, again, it sort of creates for very different gaming experiences with the same core mechanics. So I'm intrigued by that one.
Yeah.
I think the thing that kind of holds it back a bit is we're usually not into games that are like that modular, they use that modular vehicle. Because we usually, or at least myself, I like to just I learn a game, this is the game, and that's it. Even with expansions, it's like, okay, only if I love the game, I'll explore variations of this. But when a game itself is meant to be that sort of modular, I sometimes struggle a bit.
Yeah, I looked into this too, and I was just looking at kind of the base mode of it. I did like the idea of kind of vying over limited resources. So at the start, you're really just trying to collect as much food as you can into this little pouch, and that's going to be like your scoring. But what I found really interesting as well is that you're adding the traits to your species, and you're doing that face down. So no one actually knows if maybe someone's just going to come in there and take all the food because of the special traits they have before they can even get to it. And so you need to like evolve your species to kind of mitigate against the risk of that with your opponents and things. So I like the idea of that, but like Maggie, I kind of felt like, how's this modular thing going to work? And, how's that going to change the game experience? So for me, it's one of those like, try and see. But I think it might be the hotness for this con.
Yeah, at the time of checking, it's like, I think it's the one with the most thumbs up in terms of,
it did really well on Kickstarter. The cards and things look beautiful, and the modules themselves, from all accounts, seem like pretty interesting.
And apparently they really level it up as a gaming experience as well. So that's intriguing. So that's my number 7, Nature.
Now, my number 7 is a train game, and I don't love train games, but I always seem to buy them because there's so many of them. But it's Lightning Train. Now, this game caught my attention for 2 reasons. One is the designer is quite well known, designer of Clank and also Dune Imperium. The second reason is because it combines some interesting mechanics. It's a cube-style rail game combined with bag building, which I haven't seen before, and so I was immediately intrigued. Bag building is an interesting one. It's not my favorite mechanic, even though I love deck building. In bag building, and this is strange and just an Amy thing, I think, but I always feel like my luck is worse in a bag builder, even though it's technically the same.
Yeah, you think probability-wise it's going to be exactly the same. Well, it has to be, but I guess it's the thing of like if it's a deck of cards, you shuffle once and then your fate is sealed.
That's right.
in that order. You don't know what it is, but it's still. But
when it's a bag, every time I blame myself for doing a terrible draw. So
you're taking too much responsibility when
I'm
playing with the bag.
I should have grabbed one from the other corner. Anyway, fate does not seem to be on my side in bag building games, but. So this game is really interesting. You've got a map where, usual train stuff, you're placing trains out, you're building stations, and you are going to be able to fulfill contracts and move things around, usual train stuff. But the bag building element is really interesting. You're also on your turn pulling out these little tokens out of your bag. They're going to go onto your player board and they're going to fill up 5 spaces. But some of the tokens that you're eventually going to have will also have a little plus symbol on them, and they can take up additional spaces so they don't muddy up your 5 token space. So eventually in the game, you're kind of building up this engine, if you will.
Nice.
To have more and more stuff to work with. There's also a market of these tile token things where you can spend the money that's on the ones that you've drawn out of your bag, just like the usual deck builder, where you can buy more powerful tokens to put into your bag. And interestingly, the tokens themselves comprise of trains that you're going to be able to put out onto the board or use them on your player board in other ways. Also, it's going to have money so you can get more and more things, and actions as well. So these are all being driven by what you're pulling out of the bag and that randomness that I spoke about. You can also at times be discarding some of those tokens as well out of the bag, out of the game for good, of course. So then you kind of know what you have left, and you're making this more powerful combination of tokens. The other thing I really like about it is the tokens can be used to upgrade your board. So once you've been able to fill up parts of your boards, they flip over, and then you're unlocking kind of more abilities. And the other thing I really like is if you want to buy something and you don't have the money to do so, you can take a loan, but that loan also gets added into your bag. So now you're going to be drawing out this loan tile, and you can only pay it off if you happen to draw it and you can afford to pay it off at that time.
Yeah, it's kind of like that pesky thing. I'm like, oh, that's right, I still have that thing outstanding.
Yes.
Actually,
here it is again.
Well, I've got it in my mind, let me pay it off.
Exactly, yeah. And so, I don't know, there's a few things here that seem really interesting. I would definitely pick it up and would love to play this game. It is my number 7 lightning train.
My number 6 is the game Skara, Brae, and it's this is 5,000 years ago. It's a group of hunters and farmers in Scotland, where this is essentially like resource management, the game, because it's all about. Essentially, you're going to be collecting these different character cards that then will be adding to your tableau, attached to particular buildings, which will then allow you to, with workers, activate those areas to get resources. But then you're going to be storing those resources, and a lot of that game is around obviously the resource conversion, but then also managing that resource storage. Because the more you're needing to store, it's sort of, I think the link is it's starting to represent like how big. But also your village or the population is increasing. And so you're going to be generating more waste, which then gets added to the storage as well. And so you're going to have to use that up or have these kind of cleaning phases. Luckily, that can actually be used in positive ways as well. And so I think it's going to be really interesting in the sense that I like the mechanics of this seem fairly straightforward, but like integrated enough and elegant enough that I feel like for someone who loves that kind of resource management and resource exchange and going, oh, I'm going to put my thing here. I think, it'll feel satisfying and different enough. So
is this a game that you want to play solo or multiplayer?
I think, from my understanding of it, I don't think there's a lot of interaction. So I think if you're playing...
it doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, so I think even if you play multiplayer, it's going to be kind of like a multiplayer solitaire experience. It'll depend. I feel like I'm probably going to really enjoy it solo.
I think so too.
But we'll see.
We'll see.
And the interesting thing is like most, the tableau of buildings that you start with, most people, like all players will have pretty much the same buildings except for one. So everyone will have like one different kind of unique focus or ability, which I think is interesting because then it just gives you that little bit of a different approach. Actually, the thing with this is that will make it probably more satisfying at the higher player counts is you are doing a drafting of what those cards are going to be, and so I think that's the element of like, ooh, I hope the person doesn't take it, or So that is my number 6, Skara, Brae.
Now, my number 6 is higher on Maggie's list, so on to your number 5.
Right, my number 5 is the game Positano, where we are going to be architects in the beautiful Italian village of Positano, where it's all about kind of constructing the vistas that can have a look of the sea, of the ocean, because you're really kind of creating kind of holiday houses or holiday villages. Now, interestingly, this game is one of those games where you're actually going to be building a 3D version of the town. It reminds me a bit of a game that was in our most anticipated for, I believe, last GenCon, which was Cities, because there's that 3D element of you've got the little blocks that then you're able to kind of build your little towers. There's different levels, and so each level has a height restriction, as you do with real estate planning permits, but there's going to be ways of breaking those rules, which is kind of a big part of the game, where you're going to be able to essentially block the view of other people's villages or other people's houses, which is obviously going to hurt the quality of the resort experience that they're going to be able to provide to their guests. So the other interesting thing is there is bidding again. So there's an element, there's an element of bidding where you have a different range of cards, and you're going to be mixing 2 cards. One card has a different level for the different types of tokens that you're going to be collecting. So there's like tokens for the number of blocks, building blocks that you're going to be able to get. The other one is for the quality of the roof, which will dictate the quality of the resort that you're building there. But then also the other one is the location of where you're going to be able to construct. And so the way that works is you have kind of set values in each card, and then you're going to pair it with another card. And so it's that thing of timing. Depending on, you're essentially doing your triple bid at the same time for all the 3 layers. Reminds me a bit of Cities, because it was very much that similar thing of like, you're all going to be getting these different levels of elements to then construct your cities, and away you go. So I'm very intrigued by this. I think it's apparently one of those games where things can get obviously very mean because you're like blocking each other, but it doesn't overstay its welcome. So it's sort of one of those things that plays fast enough that you're like, it's fine. Like, I'm not gonna take it personally and be like, I can't believe you've
ruined my hours of work.
It's sort of like a constant sort of back and forth. So, and it looks really cool and pretty. So I'm intrigued by that one. That is my number 5, Positano.
Now, my number 5 was Maggie's number 8, and this is Galactic Cruise. Now, for background, this is a game that we completely slept on, and we take full ownership of that because we have had multiple opportunities, I believe, to demo this game at different cons, and the team have been very generous with their time. But I don't know about other people, but Maggie and I struggle quite a lot to play heavy games in a convention environment and demoing them and everything. And so, we just passed up those opportunities and we just couldn't align schedules. And so it never happened. And now that I've seen the final production and I've learned a lot more about the mechanics of the game, well, as you can see, it's number 5 on my list. I'm very intrigued by it because it's been a while since we have had a heavy worker placement game come into our collection. But I feel like worker placement is one of the loves, that's the first loves that we had.
The ones that kind of started it all were very
really
much,
did.
that mechanics.
Especially, for us. And this one is a worker placement game. It is a very kind of forgiving worker placement style of game. It's kind of interesting because, we'll talk about the base. You've done a better job of talking about what you're trying to do in the game, so I'll let you do that first.
Well, with Galactic Cruise, you're essentially you're part of the Galactic Cruise company that's all about creating selling great experiences, interstellar type experiences. But the CEO is retiring, and so you want to make sure that you're the next in line. So it's all about kind of making things, having the most influence, or I can't remember the actual kind of point of it is. But what you're going to be trying to do is that you're going to be selecting what blueprints to build, constructing ships, recruiting those travelers to go, come on, you're going to love it. It's going to be great. And then the attractions that they're going to be going on. And then actually launching those ships.
Or sometimes not. Sometimes selling the dream of a ship that never gets launched, but
like a Kickstarter can sometimes. Not this, just in general.
This
like selling the dream and then never really delivering.
But actually, the game kind of has a quirky theme because it's more like a cruise ship and the types of activities that you would do on a cruise ship, and the passengers that you attract onto these different intergalactic adventures, they all have different preferences for different types of activities. So you might have a bit of yoga, or you might have a theme park on there for different types of passengers. So it's very tongue-in-cheek, and actually that's what I didn't realize looking at the cover, because if you look at the cover, I thought more, here we go, space game. And so but actually it feels a bit more like human and real in its delivery of that space theme. So, but back to the worker placement. So you're putting out workers to get things done, but what's interesting is then you can actually build infrastructure between the worker placement spots. That means that you can take the adjacent action too, or if one of your opponents has, you can pay them to access additional spots further. You're not actually blocking each other in these worker placement spots. You can bump people out, and that means they get their worker back, which means they get to use it much sooner than they would have otherwise. And so everything else, there's so much going on. Everything that Maggie said thematically is really turned into part of the game mechanics and what you need to achieve in order to finally get to that launch event. And actually, I'm surprised as well that it is so thematic. Yeah. And I feel like actually this could be a very thematic Euro that we should have played a long time ago.
Look, for me, my excuse is like, it's one of those like, when sort of like, space, maybe not. And then because it was sort of in the stages of like, like more the Kickstarter or the launching, if you will. It was one of those of like, in my mind, I was also kind of postponing. It's like, when it sort of gets to its final kind of stage, I'll have a look at it kind of thing.
So now, if we were at GenCon, we would be checking it out and purchasing it and trying to fit it into our suitcase somehow.
Yeah, because it's not a small box.
It's not a small box. So that is my number 5, Maggie's number 8, Galactic Cruise.
Now, my number 4 is higher on Amy's list, so we'll go on to your number 4.
Okay, my number 4 is another meteor game. It is Raising Chicago. Now, back in the 1860s, 1870s in Chicago, there was a huge flooding problem. There was sewerage all over the streets, and the government at the time decided that Chicago needed to literally level up, and we needed to build infrastructure to take all of these wooden buildings and move them out into the suburbs further away from the flooding. And then the buildings that were left in the city center had to be elevated. And so they were building everything up and up to try and protect the city. And so this is actually real, and it happened. That's what this game is all about. A fascinating theme. The board itself is probably less thematic than what that sounds, as in it's, it looks like very beigey kind of Euro style game. And we're back to another bidding mechanic. So in this game, all players are going to be bidding for these spots for contracts to be able to build or basically adapt these buildings in the city center. And interestingly, the tokens that you use to bid on these contracts, if you win, you're going to win the contract. You're going to be using those tiles as the levels of the building that then get placed out onto this city grid. Now, that means that you're losing some of your bidding tokens. And so you're going to have fewer in the next round, or that is my understanding of it. And when you build these buildings into the city space, you are vying for a number of area majority kind of scoring conditions that are out there, as well as tokens that are going to give you different resources and abilities and things along the way. There's a lot more to it than that. There's a lot to do with when you're bidding as well. You get to choose where you place that bidding token, and you're going to be able to collect the resources that you need. But then depending on where you place it on that bidding tile is going to dictate whether you win or not. So it's kind of that tension of like, but I really need that resource. But then that's going to put me in, poor form for actually winning this contract. So a lot going on there. It looks like a pretty meaty experience. It is quite beige, but I'm partial to a bit of beige. So that is my number 4, Raising Chicago.
Now, my number 3, which was actually Amy's number 6, is the cheat of this whole list, because it is actually going to be multiple games in this one slot. And the reason for that is because they're all by the same publisher. So otherwise, there's going to be a lot of games in this. It would have taken up too much of the list, and it's probably easier. And like a lot of these games are smaller games, so it's like, let's just group them all into one.
Group them all together.
Yeah. So this is a whole bunch of games that are coming through All Play, the publisher All Play.
Now, and I want to say, All Play is absolutely killing it at the moment, and lots of games from Japan, lots of like really interesting titles that they're bringing in, but they're just getting a lot of great games from a lot of great designers, and all of these games, I thought we could group them because they kind of, you don't know what they're going to feel like.
Yeah.
And at the moment, they were of a similar ranking to me, but they all sound amazing. So I'm just excited to talk about them all.
And most of them, I think all of them actually look great too. Like I always love like the aesthetic that they pick for the different games. So I have them written down just so that I wouldn't forget. So the first one that I'll talk about is Ruins. So Ruins is all about kind of like discovering different relics and things, or like kind of treasure. But really the way it kind of plays out is you have this, it's a shedding game, but you have your cards have two sides that you can upgrade to in terms of the number or the value in them. As you're playing, you're also going to be kind of like the regular kind of shedding type game where if I play a pair of sixes, another pair that is higher will be able to beat that. But it's got this little twist in it where you can actually, if you play the same number after, then it'll skip the next person. So you could kind of very strategically do
very
that.
Uno-esque.
Yeah. And then the other really, like this is the main thing about it, is you're going to also
I thought you were burying the lead.
Yeah, well, constructing cards, which is the designer's John D. Clare that loves that as a kind of key mechanism.
Yes, it's called card crafting. It came from Mystic Vale, I believe was the first thing.
So you're actually going to be getting sort of translucent cards that then go into the sleeve and make for a new card. And so the cards are going to be going through this process of upgrading throughout the game and becoming more powerful, or kind of changing their value, or changing, and sometimes to a really, really powerful kind of degree. And so the deck itself that that we're going to be playing with is going to be evolving. But then there's also cards that you're going to be able to claim. You go, I want this ongoingly, so you can actually claim it with your player color. So it means that whenever it comes out next, you're going to be able to just like get that, claim that to your deck. So it's intriguing as a way of using this card crafting mechanic to then just create a very different shedding game experience that obviously has the potential to be super, super chaotic, because every game is going to be kind of different. So we'll see.
I kind of love the skipping mechanic. I just think like that's just so fun and so annoying when you're just like, I have the perfect, I got skipped. No. And skipping is treated like a pass. So actually you get skipped out of the playing a meld, and then you don't have the opportunity to play it again because it gets cleared. So chaos. That is the first one. I'll talk about one now. Which one should I talk about? One of my most anticipated ones is a game called Tearable Quest. Terrible. Yeah. Now this was a Japanese title, and it's being English edition by Allplay, and they've made some changes to it as well. But essentially, you are working with a sheet of paper that is printed with a whole heap of Sai Beppu beautiful art icons, and you're going to have to tear out the icons that are listed on a card. So it might say you need 3 of this icon. You're gonna have to work out how to carefully tear that piece of paper so that you can cleanly remove 3 of those icons without tearing them anywhere. Now, that's one part of the challenge, but the other part of the challenge is on the other side of that sheet of paper. There are curses and treasures. And so everyone needs to kind of either be flipping it backwards and forwards, which is very hard, or holding it up to the light. And the paper is semi-translucent, and we were actually able to demo this game. The paper's semi-translucent, and you can see that, there's a curse on that side. So I want to kind of tear it around, avoid that curse, and still get these tokens. So I'm really interested to see this game because I want to know how they're dealing with kind of the longevity, because you were ripping these pieces of paper. How much paper's in there? I believe when we first spoke to them, they said they would have refill packs.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, but obviously, it is a lot of paper that you're going through. But I want to see how that's come together. So that's one of them is Tearable Quest. Yes.
We also have, there's Soda Jerk. So this is the Chris G design, where you are essentially playing. It's in that sense, that vibe of like these different values, which are going to be the different types of sodas. They're going to be shifting in value, because all you're going to be doing is you start with, depending on the player count, different soda flavors in the middle of the table, and then on your turn you get to either add a face down card to one of those flavors, and if the flavor that the suit essentially matches the flavor that it's in, even though you're playing it face down, when it gets revealed, it's going to add positive points to that flavor, which means that at the end of the game, any cards that I have left that have that flavor is going to be positive. If I add mismatch flavors, they're going to count as negative points for that flavor. So it's that thing of like, you're kind of manipulating the market. The other thing that you can do is you can actually just reveal one of the cards that's there to have a little bit more information of what your opponents may have played.
Yeah.
So the other thing is they also have, like, that's a fairly straightforward mechanic. They also have a B-side to all of the flavors, which means that then it's like different unique conditions or scoring things that might happen with that particular flavor. So yeah.
So this game reminds me a lot of like a combination of Courtesans, a game Courtesans, but a much simplified version of that, and a bit like Vegetable Stock as well, where you're trying to like manipulate the value of things and have those cards left in hand. And so I think this is going to be one of those safe bets in terms of if you like that style of game, this is delivering it in a very convenient, simple package. And so it feels like a game that you could instantly teach and get into really quickly. So I think a lot of people will enjoy this game. I want to talk about another game by All Play, which is called Vegas Strip. Now, this is a game by Peter C. Haywood, who has, who makes great games. And a lot of the time, the All Play games that Peter has made have been quite difficult and very challenging little games. But this one is quite interesting in that you're setting up a Vegas Strip. So you've got all of these different casinos in the center of the table. And on your turn, you're going to be playing down a little chip that has your suit on it. So I might be, let's say I'm diamonds, and these chips have a different value on them. And so I'm going to be contributing or kind of betting on each of these casinos. And what you don't know is that some of these casinos are going to be corrupt. Now, you get a little bit of information at the start so that you may know that one of them is corrupt. But what's interesting is that if you're the highest bidder on a corrupt casino, you end up getting a large sum of points. I think it's 20 points. And yet you can't bid using your highest chip on the casino that you know is corrupt. So actually, if I play my powerful black...
Because otherwise it would be insider trading. Aside from that, everything is super fine.
Super fine, super above board. So if I play my black 7, which is my highest chip, onto a casino, everybody at the table knows that I actually don't know that that is corrupt or not. So it's sharing that kind of information. Now, at the end, for casinos that are not corrupt, the person who bid the most actually just, their chips just get removed, and then everybody else, the sum of what they've bid, they get that back in kind of money. And so it's just a really interesting dynamic. On top of that, there's these variable conditions that go underneath each of the casino, and there's so much variability in the box on that. I think there's 20 different little rules that go onto the casinos. And so I'm just intrigued to see how this plays out, because it sounds very much like slightly deduction, slightly bluffing, throwing people off with where you're bidding, and they're like, what do they know? What do they know?
Very good. Another title is actually the game Vivo, which is a remake of a Japanese game, and it's keeping the theme. It's keeping a lot of the art.
This is the Japanese version.
This is the Japanese version, which we have and we hadn't actually played. But this is by a designer, Leo, who is known for making really quirky kind of designs in the games. And so in Vivo, the theme is all about dogs that are in a choir, and so you're going to be singing different types of songs. And so every round, it's sort of trick-taking-esque in that every round there's going to be a particular type of song, meaning it'll be like a solo, a duet, a trio, a quartet, which will dictate how many different colored or types of suits have to be present in that trick. So the interesting thing about this is if you do a duet and I play a particular color, then the person after me can either play that color or any other color. Once 2 colors have been claimed, the other players have to stay in that duet. So they have to stay playing with those 2 cards. The interesting thing about this is you can end up in positions where you're forcing people to have to play. For example, if it's a trio and you're the last player and only 2 colors have been played, you now have to play a different suit. And if it's a quartet and you're playing, 4 players, you're essentially forcing everyone to play a must not follow type game. The other thing is, at the end of that round, whoever plays the highest card then we'll get to turn that card over as 2 points. But whoever plays the lowest card gets to keep that card as points based on the value on that card. So if you manage to play the lowest card as a 4, then great. Like, you get to now have 4 points. So it's just a nice little kind of twist, but in a really quirky way that actually is,
We should play it.
We should play it. We have it right here. But I'm also intrigued with what they do with the production as well, because I believe it's also them bringing Sai Beppu art as well. So it's like you're now going to have double the illustrators in the in the editions. So that was
Very
Vivo.
cute. Now, I promise this is not sponsored content for All Play, because actually All Play games, are a little bit hit and miss for us, and we never have this many on our anticipated list. But there is another one that we did have the opportunity to play, which is Oddland. Now, I believe this is a first-time designer actually, and it's one of those games that has cards that have multiple types of terrain on them, and then they get layered on top of each other. So something like Confusing Lands, like the game Cafe, multiple games, that Nemalia, that game. But you're all going to be doing this collectively in the center space, and you're basically creating this one world that exists with lots of different terrains. Now, the interesting thing about it is every time you play a card down into this space, you also have to commit one of your little meeples,
one of your
odd little creatures, which represents a scoring condition, onto the board. And so the timing of how you're going to allocate all of your scoring conditions onto different parts of the boards, which is still evolving, is key to this game. Are you really going to commit over here? Now everybody knows the scoring condition that you're messing
with your scoring condition
that you're going for over here, and now no one's going to let you have that one. But maybe you're willing to sacrifice that one because you've got a bigger game plan about something you're going to do over here. So that little twist makes it really interactive.
Yeah, I love the artwork as well in this game. The character, the animals, they're all hybrid of like two actual animals creating this sort of odd animal. And you're essentially, it's like you're kind of discovering this land and documenting these weird species, and that's the sort of the theme behind it all. But I think it'll be one of those highly interactive, very almost like that Carcassonne element of, because you're kind of building a central thing together, you can really mess with one another, or potentially be like, oh, actually, I'm going to jump on that thing that you've got going there. Like, this thing that has been created is really good. I'm just going to jump in there. So yeah, I think that'll be an interesting one.
Yes, and they have many more titles coming out, but those are our picks, and they were my number 6 and Maggie's number 3. Now, my number 3 is my other trick-taking game on this list. It is a game by Taiki Shinzawa. It is called No Loose Ends, but actually before that it was called Shut the Books. And this is a very famous trick-taking designer who's done games like Lures and American Bookshop and Six Forces and 9 Lives by All Play. So a lot of well-known trick-taking games. And I wanted to pick up Shut the Books at the last Tokyo Game Market, but Paul Solomon and his new publishing company picked up the rights to this game and are now distributing it much more broadly under the title No Loose Ends. So what is the deal with this game? Essentially, you are using cards out of your hand to bid for the number of tricks that you think you're going to win, and thereby decreasing the number of cards in your hand that you have available to win said tricks. Now, we played a game that had this kind of mechanic in it called Call of Yeti. So I can make the kind of similarities to like that gameplay. In this game, it's just a simple, the rest of the game is quite simple. It's just a simple must follow with a trump suit in it. But interestingly, when you play cards down as a bid, they are played face up as well. So the more you're bidding, the more information you're giving to other players as well about the cards that are still left in the deck. The other thing is that after all the bidding is complete, because I think they've made a slight change to the rules where one at a time people are playing down one trick bid and it goes around rather than everyone showing what they're doing at the same time. And so once you've locked in the number of tricks that you're going to win, it's the person that has the fewest number of cards in their hand that's going to dictate how many tricks are played. So I suppose if you're trying to shoot the moon, it's good for you if someone else goes really crazy and thinks that they can get 4 tricks this round, because that means there's going to be fewer tricks that you need to lose. And you've got someone really aggressively trying to win. So it sounds like an interesting concept. I'm looking forward to seeing how it kind of comes together with the new theme as well. So that is my number 3, No Loose Ends. Just one more thing I want to add to that. So the new publishing company is also going to have Corgi Pile Up at GenCon as well, and that is a retheming of GenCon. So if you've played GenCon, it is kind of a funny party-style trick-taking game, and I believe it is a retheming of that. Totally cute though. Corgi
it's very simple as a game, but it's like the only thing that counts is the last trick. So it's very trippy that way. Now for number 2, we actually have a shared number 2, so we agree on this one.
We do.
Yeah, and it's the game Wine Cellar, which is another bidding game.
It is
So,
another mini game. You
feel
know,
like
the games that you hate but put at number 2.
Apparently we have been proven
love
ourselves
them.
wrong.
I know I love them.
Yeah, I've proven myself wrong. So Wine Cellar is all about, we are different sommeliers trying to compete for the best possible collection that will be the most pleasing to our clients. And so a collection of wines, I should say. And so the cards are essentially these wine bottles, which is what you're going to be using, which is what you're going to be trying to add to your collection. But at the same time is the thing that you're going to be using as well as currency to bid for the wine bottles that are on display. Yeah. And the wine bottles that you used to bid with will become the things that you can then that are up for grabs and bidding in the following rounds.
Now the bidding is actually like a 6-nimit style bidding where everybody reveals their number at the same time. So you reveal your number at the same time, and then in the order, you know, from high to low, you get to choose which wine you're going to bring into your cellar. Now it gets even more interesting from there because firstly, thematically, you're turning the wine on its side because that's how the wine needs to be stored in a cellar. But then also you are locking in kind of the first wine is going to be every subsequent wine that you put in your cellar has to either go above or below that wine. And the final position that the wines are in at the end are going to have different scoring depending on whether it was at the top or at the bottom of your cellar, that each wine has a different scoring mechanism.
Yeah,
for
it's
that.
almost like the order that you serve the wine in. It's like if you serve this third, it's a quality 8. If you serve it first, it's a quality 1.
I thought it was representing quality of aging for the different
that
wines.
could be. Yeah. I thought it was maybe just the same.
Time.
In my mind, it was like in the same across the same meal, the order of them. But I guess that would be
8 wines.
I mean, yeah, if you're pairing wines with a meal, I don't know. I don't
Need
really
a restaurant
Yeah,
wine.
clearly we know nothing.
We know nothing
this
about
theme.
wine.
Yeah.
And probably that's why it hadn't caught our attention before. But now that there's more information out about how this game plays, I am convinced that this game will get to our table a lot because when you read it, it's like so easy to teach. You could teach that in like 2 minutes, and then everyone also kind of understands the concepts of cellaring wine, of auctions. So I just think it's going to be really fun. Plus, it plays up to 8, so hallelujah, because I love party games that can play that many people. There are not that many of them.
Yeah, and I feel like also that puzzle of like, ooh, how am I going to order now that I have this, this lot of 3 or 4 wines? Where am I going to put this one at the top and bottom, and how does it then rejig the values of all of those individual wines? Like, I think that's going to be a really satisfying puzzle in and of itself.
I agree. I'm really looking forward to that one. That's why it is both of our number 2 Wine Cellar.
And now for my number 1 is the game Above and Below Haunted, which is a standalone kind of sequel to the game Above and Below that has beautiful Ryan Lockett art and design. And it's a game that I haven't, it's a big gap in my playing collection. It's just one of those things that I've always been attracted to the artwork. I've always been attracted to the sort of world of it, and it's just I've never played it. It just hasn't really happened.
You've done the whole Sleeping Gods experience, but just never gone
Twice.
back into
but haven't kind of gone back to that that setting.
Didn't you play Near and Far?
No, I had Now or Never. But I still haven't played it either. So, and I was like, it's now or never.
We have it somewhere.
It.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's in one of our boxes in storage that eventually I'll be able to like get back out, because I do want to play these ones. It's just time. Anyways, so in this one, this is actually good because apparently this is almost like a streamlining and tweaking of a lot of what Above and Below was. You're essentially these you're constructing or building constructing buildings in your village and expanding it so you can do things like fishing and gathering resources. And it's Above and Below because you can also, my understanding is you can also go into like sort of ruins or caves and get other types of resources that way. But this version also is haunted because you can actually, as you're doing certain actions in the game and attracting different characters, they can attract ghosts. So you can actually end up with haunted buildings. Interestingly enough, this one is apparently it's done a lot around mitigating things like roll to resolve.
Okay.
And so you now have, it's not as devastating, like you actually have ways around it. And even with those ghosts, you can, when you do an exorcism and get rid of them, you actually, it adds more interaction because you send them to someone else, usually on the table, which can be a little bit mean and take that. However, that person could have a building that actually wants to have ghosts. So it's like, the more ghosts, the better. So I like all of those little things that have been added. And so
what you're saying is lucky that you skipped straight to this edition.
I mean, it worked out well.
If you actually managed to get this one played.
I'm gonna really try, because again, I love the aesthetic of this. I love even just the setting. And so that is my number one, Above and Below, Haunted.
And now my number one game, and the game I would be going straight to the booth to purchase.
My number 4 as well.
Maggie's number 4 is a game called Zenith. Now, I have been fortunate enough to have been taught by Maggie and played this on Board Game Arena.
Yeah, and I'll say this is actually, I'll shout out to the Joey fam, because this was actually introduced to me by a member of the Joey fam who was like, hey, let's just play something, like, suggest anything that you like. And it was like, well, what about, this game? I was like, oh, I haven't played it. Well, let me try it out. Board Game Arena. And the first time I played it, I was like, okay, that was interesting, but it's very abstract. And so I was like, but it stayed with me. And I was like, and Amy's going to love this. And it was actually quite satisfying. I want to go back in there again. And then just kept playing it, introduced Amy to it. And I was like, actually, you know what? Thank you for introducing me to this, even though it's abstract. I'll say what the theme is meant to be.
Okay.
So
I don't actually know what the theme is meant to be.
It doesn't really kind of matter all that much, because it plays out very abstractly. You are trying to gain control of this intergalactic Congress. And so the way, it's the Senate. And so the way that you're going to do that is by gaining influence in all these 5 different planets. And so the type of victory that you can have is either this sort of absolute victory where you get, and it's really just collecting different color tokens ultimately, which are the planets. Either 3 different, like three of the same planets. So it's like you really double down and you have full control of this planet, or that's absolute, I think. And then there's like democratic, which is like you have at least 4 different ones. Or popular, which is 5 overall kind of. So that's thematically kind of like what's meant to be happening.
Thematically, and also a little bit mechanically there. But what it is essentially is a lane battler between 2 players. You can play it 4 players as well, but you're going to be playing on teams. But essentially, it is the push and pull of influence over these 5 planets. And once you are able to drag that influence over to your side, you are going to gain a token that Maggie talked about that's going to dictate that instant win game condition. Now, the cards themselves are the cool part about this game. They are multi-use cards. So and they have different suits that match the planet. So when you, at its base form, you can play a card down, you can pay its cost, and if you do that, you move up in influence on that particular track, and it also usually has a really powerful, cool action that you get to do on top of moving, that planet up in influence. But you can also use the cards to go up, you can pay credits to go up a technology track as well. And when you go up the technology track, you're able to activate all of the previous abilities that are below that on that same technology track. So it kind of has this engine building feel where you get more and more powerful actions every time you go to those tracks. And then the other thing that I really like about this game is that leadership token that kind of flips towards one person or the other, and that dictates the number of cards you're allowed to have in your hand. And I think that is really clever as well. And so this is a game that is just push-pull the whole way, and you have to really keep an eye on what the other player is doing, because you don't want them to be collecting too many of these tokens.
But you also get discounts. So if, for the cards that you've already played in the particular colors, when you're playing subsequent cards in that row or like column, you're going to get discounts as well. So it's got a lot of different things that are build on one another.
And you can steal cards from the other player and put them into your column as well, because you don't want them to have that discount. You want to have that discount. So it's really interesting, especially if you're going for that diversity of planets as well, because obviously the more you get of one colored card, you might be able to just continuously play cards down for really cheap into one planet. But if you're going for this diversity, it just really depends on the luck of the draw, and you have to adjust your strategy depending on what cards you pick up.
And it is one of those games that you have to be paying attention to what your opponent is doing.
100% of the
because
time.
it's like, wait a second, now they're about to win, so then I need to be more defensive in that area or pull one of these levers back, because if they get it, then So.
Now, I've only played the digital version of this, obviously, but I am so keen to play the physical version of this. I don't think it will be fiddly. I think it will be still pretty straightforward. It's got a great flow, this game, and it's just a really nice 2-player battle. So that is why it is my number one, Zenith. So now all we have to say is that we have FOMO and we wish we could be there with you. If you are going to GenCon, let us know in the comments below, what is your number one grab that you'll be briskly walking to and definitely not running when the doors open? And, you know, I'm sad that we're not going to be there, because I love standing in line, chatting to people, talking about our lists. It's just, GenCon has an amazing vibe. So please, if you're going, have the best time for us as well. And we look forward to hearing all about your game experiences, but we'll be back with more board game content soon. So otherwise, bye for now.
Bye.